Now here's your host, Jason Voorhees. And Aaron Savage.
Oh, yeah!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports and Metal Podcast. We are your co-host. This is Aaron Savage. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Mr. Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, man. What's up?
What's going on, Jay? How are you?
Doing great. I know you've been extremely busy, so.
Very busy, but not busy enough to know that the Mets and not your Phillies are in first place, baby. 7 in a row. Let's go, Mets. Let's go, Mets.
I had a feeling that was coming. That's why I wore my Philly stuff, but.
I think the Mets are just starting to percolate, man. Just starting to percolate.
Well, we'll see about that.
We'll see. Anyway, why don't we jump off? A big loss this week. As 80s kids and metalheads, Tawny Katane, man, she was an icon. Oh, my son Meyer is here to say hi. Anyway, she was an icon. She appeared in all the Whitesnake videos. She was on the cover of the Rat EP. She was on the cover of the first full-length Rat album, Out of the Cellar. She was, like I said, an icon. She has a sports connection, too. She was married to Angels pitcher Chuck Finley. I don't know if you remember, she was accused of domestic violence for beating him up. But
yeah.
It's a tough loss. Tawny Katane, she seemed like a real sweetheart. I know she battled in recent years with drugs and alcohol. Most recent, I really saw her. I think she was on the Surreal Life on VH1, which is usually where former stars that their careers are over, that's where they go or went when the show was on. But big loss. She's with Robin Crosby, her first love.
Yeah,
our player from Rat. She's with him reunited. So rest in peace, Tawny Katane.
I mean, I got to be honest about Tawny Katane. Like, I know, most people obviously remember her for the Whitesnake stuff. Obviously that's when she kind of really took off, as like a sex icon and, what we would call like a bombshell, type personality. But for me, I got to be totally honest with you, man. The first time that I saw Tawny Katane was on the Back for More video from Rat. And I mean, I was like completely mesmerized from the first second I saw her. Like when they kind of come in, they show her legs, like they're in the diner. They show her legs, and then the camera kind of goes up, and like her shirt's unbuttoned. She gets up and goes to the jukebox and puts on the song, and then you hear Robin Crosby playing the I think it's
Warren.
No, but Warren, but Crosby plays the acoustic part.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. He does. Yeah.
And I was completely blown away. So that was like my first memory of Tawny Katane, and I'll just never forget that from that video. And obviously, she had other things. She was on, The Bachelor. Obviously, that was a great. She had a great role in that movie. As I said,
Bachelor Party you're talking about with Tom Hanks.
Yes, Bachelor Party. Yes,
One of the classic '80s movies. Love it.
I mean, quite an actress. I mean, she obviously wasn't in too many roles as far as movies, but obviously that was a big one. But it kind of got me to thinking, like, when I was thinking about Tawny Katane, kind of where would she kind of fall on your list of like top, models of that era? Like,
Always with the list with you.
Well, I know,
Always with the list with you.
I'm just saying, like, well, it doesn't have to be a list per se.
I don't know. Like she was awesome. I mean, she was the Farrah Fawcett of the '80s in many ways. If what Farrah Fawcett was for the '70s, I think Tawny Katane was for the '80s. I mean, is that a good answer?
Right. That's exactly what.
Yeah. But Heather Thomas was another one from The Fall Guy. If you remember.
Yeah, I was thinking Heather Thomas, Heather Locklear. I was thinking like, Bobby Brown even, but Bobby Brown was a little bit later. But it's funny how a lot of these, obviously pop stars, they end up dating like metal guys or guys in the rock business. because we've seen that. We've seen quite a few of that. And as you said,
speaking of Tawny Kitane's legs, not to get off subject, but people don't realize, and I didn't realize it either. You know, obviously that's Tawny Kitane's legs on the cover of the Rat EP, their first EP with the rats coming up. I'm currently reading that book, Nothing But a Good Time. I plugged it on the show a couple weeks ago. It's like an oral history of the 80s heavy metal scene. And a cool anecdotal story I recently read in the book was, you know, obviously they got Tawny Kitane to pose for the pictures because she was dating Robin Crosby of Rat at the time. That was, you know, her first love. They were dating, blah, blah, blah. It was an amazing story. I think they had rented. You could rent rats. They rented like 5 white rats or whatever it was to have them crawling up her legs, and she was all grossed out, but she did it for the photo. But if you look at it, I think there's one black rat, and they didn't rent the black rat. So the legend goes, where did the black rat come from?
Oh my God, I didn't hear. Yeah, I got to definitely buy the book just because you plugged it. And I've heard quite a few people plugging that book, by the way, not to get off the subject, but I've heard that it like kind of brings back a lot of memories. And
it's an amazing book, man.
I'm definitely going to purchase it. But one more thing about Tawny Kitane, I know we got a lot to get into, but do you remember she was on a Seinfeld episode?
Don't remember that.
Okay, yeah, she played one of Jerry's girlfriends on a Seinfeld, and I remember that was my favorite episode ever because I'm not a Seinfeld guy, and I only liked it because she was on it. So.
Well, for me, I'm not a Seinfeld guy either, but the only episode I remember of Seinfeld is the Keith Hernandez episode, and we know why. Hernandez, and I'm a Mets fan, but that's my extent of Seinfeld watching. I've never been a big Seinfeld guy. Kind of a whiny guy to me.
Me neither. I know it gets a lot of, play as far as being one of the top, sitcoms of all time, but I never got it.
Yeah, I mean it's got its moments, but I'm not a huge fan. But anyway, moving on, bro. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The inductees were announced. Randy Rhoads is finally getting recognized. That's awesome. Now he's getting recognized. I don't understand the induction. In other words, there's inductees, and then there's a few inductees that are like I'm looking it back up here. Oh, the Musical Excellence Award, they call it. I'm not really sure what they mean by that. Is that means he's an official inductee of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or is he just being recognized and getting an award, or his estate is getting an award? In other words, Jay-Z is getting inducted. The Foo Fighters are getting inducted, and et cetera, et cetera. A couple other artists like LL Cool J, Randy Rhoads, they're getting the 2021 Inductee Musical Excellence Award. Is that an official inductee, or is it just an award?
Wow, that's a good question because I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, and you know why I don't know? Because I don't give a fuck about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is why we're getting into that. What a joke. What a joke. Listen, I'm not saying that Jay-Z's not a great rapper, this, that, and the other thing. But like, if there was a hip hop Hall of Fame, would Judas Priest be inducted into that Hall of Fame? No. So why is Jay-Z being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when Judas Priest hasn't been inducted to that Hall of Fame? What are we doing here?
I know who's coming.
What are we doing here? What a joke. What a farce. What a joke. And listen, I'm all for recognizing artists. Because, okay, let's go back. I remember when Run DMC was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. A lot of people were up in arms about it because they're a hip-hop rap group. I wasn't so up in arms about the fact that they were inducted because they were like one of the originators of hip-hop. They had some rock influences. Rick Rubin produced them. Rick Rubin, who produced Slayer, started Def Jam Records. There was that kind of hard rock, heavy metal tie, kind of like the Beastie Boys too. And, Run DMC kind of like melded rock and rap when they did the Walk This Way with Aerosmith and, Rock Box, King of Rock, songs like that had heavy guitars in them. And Darryl McDaniels at the time when they were inducted, he had a great quote when he said that like hip hop was rock and roll because rock and roll is an attitude. And you know what? I kind of agree with that. I do think rock and roll is an attitude to an extent. So I don't necessarily have a problem with like a Run DMC getting inducted. Like NWA was another group I didn't have a necessarily. Cause I'm not one of these like old school stubborn metalheads. Like, oh, I only like Metallica, pre-Black album. Everything else sucks. Like I'm not one of these narrow-minded, stupid metalheads like a lot of us are in metal community. Stubborn people. We don't want to evolve. We don't, whatever. I'm not one of those. So NWA was another group. You remember Axl Rose in the November Rain video had an NWA hat on. NWA, if you listen to like Straight Outta Compton, 100 Miles and Running, you could actually headbang and mosh to those songs. Even though they're not heavy metal songs or rock songs per se, the lyrical content is heavy and the music is heavy. And they were pioneers of their genre.
Well, they had guitar in their music too.
So maybe in the grand scheme of things, if you're going to say Jay-Z is one of the greatest rappers of all time, maybe I could live with him being inducted, but not before Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and how many others, like even Rush has been inducted now, but how long did Rush have to wait to get inducted? What an absolute joke. Honestly, the Foo Fighters, I don't really have a problem with them being inducted because it's amazing what Dave Grohl has accomplished since Nirvana, and Foo Fighters, let's be honest, has become one of the biggest rock and roll bands of the last 25 years, although some of that I think is like being the token rock and roll band. For some reason, Dave Grohl's like the token rock guy. The Grammys, if they have to have one rock guy, it's Dave Grohl. The MTV Video Music Awards, if there's one rock guy, it has to be Dave Grohl. So there's that aspect of it too. But I still think, nope, Frank, I'm drinking my vodka cran, bro. That's all I drink. Come on, man. But so I don't have a problem with the Foo Fighters being inducted. But again, this is their first year on the ballot, ahead of Maiden, ahead of Priest. So the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just doesn't get it. They never have. It's a bunch of uptight guys in suits that just don't understand rock and roll. They don't understand what it is. What are your thoughts, Jay?
Dude, I mean, honest to God, I gotta tell you, I don't think it's just the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that I have a problem with. I have a problem with almost all Hall of Fames because they're all a joke. Baseball, football, they're all a joke anymore. The standards that they have, like whether in baseball, they pick people that do belong, and then there's other people on there that you're like, how are they not in the Hall of Fame? And it's all because it's done by writers. Like, honest to God, like I feel like Hall of Fame shouldn't be writers. If anything, it should probably be the people that watched the sport or listened to the music. How about that? How about the fans? How about letting the fans play a part in who belongs or who doesn't? Because I guarantee you, if it was the fans, Judas Priest and Iron Maiden would have been in there a long time ago. Because let's face it, I get it that the rock and roll it's a bigger umbrella. It's not just metal. But let's be real here. And you kind of touched on it with what you were saying about, Jay-Z. And like I said, I have no problem with Jay-Z. But if Jay-Z is going to be in there, then Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, they almost certainly have to be in there.
They should have been there 10 years ago.
Exactly.
But let me kind of piggyback off what you're saying. I don't 100% agree with you. Let's take the Baseball Hall of Fame as an example. I think there are aspects of it that are a joke because there's so much inconsistencies now because you have the steroid era and you have certain writers that devalue the players that did steroids and you have other writers that are like, well, I'm okay with it. It was an era, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it's still not as bad as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. At the end of the day, the Baseball Writers Association is still voting on baseball players when they're voting for players to make the Hall of Fame in baseball.
But I can give you
Football Hall of Fame is still voting for football players to be in the Football Hall of Fame, et cetera, et cetera. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is letting rappers in it. That's not rock and roll in that sense. Now, again, I go back. I said rock and roll is an attitude. So I'm not like trying to say, oh, it's not at all. Like they shouldn't be there. I'm not trying to be like the get off my lawn guy. I'm not trying to be that guy. But if you're going to have these guys that aren't necessarily rock and roll by the, virtue of what you probably define it as, you got to get the guys in there that are rock and roll by definition in there first. You can't have legends like Kiss and Rush waiting for 2 decades after they're originally eligible to get in. You know, you got bands celebrating their 50th anniversary that are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
It's a disgrace.
Icons of the genre.
I mean,
so how is Jay-Z in his first year of eligibility? See, that's the difference. That's why the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is the biggest joke. And there are, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's the same thing. People in the industry get votes. So I don't understand where the disconnect is. I don't understand it. I don't. And that's why I don't get it. That's why I didn't know what the Randy Rhoads induction even means. Because I don't care.
There's too many inconsistencies, like, across the board. I agree. I mean, like, I guess the other part that frustrates you is like even like you were saying a couple episodes back when we were talking about Van Halen, how he got little, as far as the little amount of airplay,
at the Grammys, they did nothing. They put a car on a stool and shined a spotlight on it.
And that's just another reason why I can't stand pop culture today, because as a whole.
I agree.
Because everything is just so watered down, and it's all about pleasing the masses as opposed to doing the right thing.
Exactly, you nailed it. It's all about pleasing the kids that are streaming music. Well, here's the other thing. Nobody's buying records anymore. It's all streaming. And the people that are streaming the most or watching the YouTube videos the most are the little kids. That's who they're catering to. So I get it in a sense. Like, that's who's going to be mostly on the Grammys and stuff. But you can't disrespect the legends. And guess what? If MTV is going to be called MTV, can it fucking play music? Maybe we could get back, if everything is so screen oriented, you know what I'm saying? Like, going back to the 80s when MTV became a thing. That's when image became a thing, video became a thing. Play music, play all the genres of music. Get the kids exposed to something other than mumble rap. See what happens. Dude, when we were in high school, whether it was in the early years of like Motley Crue, Metallica, and then the later years of our high school 4 years, because we went through a very unique period in high school, dude. The first 2 years of high school for us was like LA metal, and the last 2 years was grunge. And honestly, those are probably the last two real rock scenes. There hasn't been a real scene since. If you want to call post-grunge a scene, which I don't, but there hasn't been a scene, an actual scene where like you had punk rock in the 70s, a scene. We lived through two in high school. And think about how big it was. It wasn't only rap. Rap music was pretty popular when we were in high school, but the rock music was as popular as anything when we were in high school. And it was because it got exposure.
I think rock and metal during that time, rock and metal were more popular. You're right. And now,
you could argue that they were. Absolutely.
Now it's almost like they don't exist in the mainstream community.
What's the difference of a kid now or us as kids? It's all about what they're exposed to. And it's sad because it's the dumbing down of society, dude, because there's so much crap. It's mumble rap with like disgust. And I don't want to be the get off my lawn guy, because let's be honest, I love Guns N' Roses. But you know what? As much as they might have said the F word in a song or talked about something that kids shouldn't hear, it wasn't ignorant. It was coming from a place of, like, I learned from it. You know what I mean? Mr. Brownstone was obviously about heroin and heroin addiction. So, no, but it wasn't like telling you to do heroin. It was telling you the pitfalls of it. But it was still like a learning experience. Or like Welcome to the Jungle, how Axl was like a redneck from Indiana and he went to LA, and the black guy goes, "Hey, you know where you are? You in the jungle." And he put it to lyrics. Those are stories. And Axl was exposed to the city and other cultures. So as much as it was controversial, it was educational. I feel like I learned more from the music that I listened to growing up than I learned in school. Because I was, back when we were kids, you bought an album, you read the lyrics, it was poetry. And you learned everything about life from it. Relationships, drugs, death, family. You learned it from the music that you listen to. What are kids learning now? Listening to this mumble rap that's disgusting. I have 3 kids, so I know. I hear it. I don't listen to it, but I hear it. It's awful.
More. I think you nailed it. It was more of an art form at that time.
Absolutely.
I think today, and I'm not knocking bands of today, because there's some great bands, and there's a lot of new material that I like, but it's just not the same. And I think you nailed it when you said like the dumbing down of society. And like, like you said, like everything's about stream and everything's instant gratification. Like people don't even listen to a full album anymore, even of their favorite bands. You could have a Metallica put out a whole album right now, and I guarantee you people would not even listen to every song on the record because they're only going to listen
to rock guys. Think about this. Kids, if I went to my daughter, only maybe because I'm her dad and she talks to me, but there's a chance she doesn't even know what the word album means. Kids don't even know what an album is. They don't know what that is. They don't know. They just get singles. They stream YouTube videos. They don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, because part of what attracted me to the music was buying the album and the CD and reading, like looking at the inside and the pictures and like, you know, the lyrics and like even like reading like, you know, who the songs were credited to. Like, I don't see any of that anymore. No. Like you said, it's all on Amazon.
Dude, when we grew up, we even knew the guys who produced the records.
I know.
We knew Joe Klink produced Appetite for Destruction. We knew Bob Rock produced the Black Album. We knew Mutt Lange produced Hysteria Empire. We knew everybody because you cared. You gave a shit. It was an art form. You got a record. You listened to it from track 1 through track 10 or track 1 through track 12, whatever it was, and you read the lyrics. And in often cases, all the songs tied together to tell a story. And then you compared the sound to maybe their prior record, and you notice maybe this album was more slickly produced and it had a more bombastic drum sound. You broke these records down, and everything like it's gone, it's lost. So we're all over the place. We're talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I mean that's the problem. That's the problem. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is catering to people that know nothing about rock and roll, nothing about music. They just want to get maybe some viewership. You know, maybe some credit, you know, when they tweet that Jay-Z made the Hall of Fame and they get some followers, or maybe somebody tunes into HBO and watches the concert. Honestly, for me, the only thing I do love about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is I look forward to the concert every year. I do. Like Dire Straits gets inducted. I want to see them play. You know, Guns N' Roses, I want to see. I remember when Miles Kennedy played. Every year I look forward to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame concert because the few bands that I do like, they play on the performance. And I enjoy it. But outside of that, I don't care. I just don't. I'm sorry, bro. And it's sad. It's sad. It's disgusting.
I'm with you. And I don't watch the Grammys. I don't watch, you know, whatever I know it used to be called the music awards, whatever. I don't know if it was the MTV Music Awards or all those music awards. I don't watch any of them anymore for that reason and that reason alone, because I think they're all a joke. They're all watered down. They all cater to, you know, what everybody, the masses, I would say, and they don't really do the right thing.
I hate saying the masses because I don't think it's the masses. I think there's more people like us than them as far as like the people that they're trying to cater to.
So maybe
the audience that they're catering to are the ones that are streaming. People our age, we're working. We have jobs, you know, and nobody's buying albums anymore because you stream it. So they're just trying to cater to the kids who do stream on YouTube. You know, the kids who do stream the new hip hop song. That's it. I don't know if it's the masses. It's just the youth, you know? And like I said, that's why I brought up when we were in high school. The youth is just not exposed to what we were exposed to. And I think if they were, they'd probably be into some different stuff. You know?
Whatever it is, it's a joke. It's a joke. Speaking of Hall of Fames, I think that brings us to a perfect topic, which is our next one. I really wanted to kind of get into the Albert Pujols discussion and you know, what your thoughts are on him and where he ranks among, you know, the greats. Because in my opinion, it's almost criminal to me because at least in my opinion, I don't see him hardly ever get discussed when people are talking about great players. Like, I don't hear his name mentioned near as much as I would hear like a Barry Bonds or, you know, an A-Rod. But the guy just put up numbers that were like historic numbers.
That's a fair point. Why don't we start by bringing up why we're bringing this up? If you haven't heard, the Angels unceremoniously cut Albert Pujols this past week. Controversial move. A lot of people were pissed off. I know Pedro Martinez and David Ortiz were ripping the Angels for it. I think it was a messed up move. I mean, you already paid this guy for the last 10 years, you overpaid him because let's be honest, when they gave him the 10-year, when the Angels gave Pujols the 10-year deal, it was already when he had seen his best years in St. Louis. So it was a bad contract. So you paid this guy 9.5 years of the contract. Why cut him now? He's a legend. He deserved better. It was a messed up move by the Angels, but that's why we're talking about Albert Pujols. And Jay, when it comes to Pujols, I will tell you this. People forget how great he was because he's been good in with the Angels the last 10 years. That's the other part of this. He hasn't been bad. It's just they paid him to be the best player in the game, and he was no longer that. He was solid. The last couple of years, his average has dipped. But even the amazing thing, if you look, even in these down years that Pujols has recently had with the Angels, he still doesn't strike out, which I find mind-boggling. A lot of times you see guys in their later years when they start being less successful, the strikeouts go up. Pujols is still not striking out, and that's, to me, one of the most impressive things. I'm going to pull up Pujols' stats really quick. I'm curious to see how much he had struck out this season before they cut him. One of the most impressive things for me with Pujols throughout the years was that he was just a guy that would hit 330, 35, 40 bombs, and he would strike out like 45 times in 600 at-bats. Like, for example, in his rookie year, he struck out 93 times in 590 at-bats. Jay, that's his career high. That is still his career high. Nope, he tied it in 2017 in 593 at-bats, though. It's almost 600 at-bats. So 93 is his career high. He had struck out 13 times this year in 86 at-bats. So he was still not striking out, bro. That's still like a 75 strikeout pace over a full season, which today is mind-boggling. So you almost wonder why his average was so low. His batting average on balls in play was like ridiculously low. Like it almost seemed like it would have to average out to a higher average, but it's just bizarre. He was hitting 198. He had 224 last year. Last year he struck out 25 times in 152 at bats. So he was still not striking out. He was still hitting for contact. The power numbers went down. Like I said, I mean, I think he's just a forgotten player in this era because he hung around for so long with the Angels and wasn't the same player that he was in St. Louis. But to answer your question, where do I rank him? One of my favorite players that I've ever watched. When he was in St. Louis, he was as good of a hitter as I've ever seen.
Dude,
as good of a hitter as I've ever seen.
I have to give you these numbers because I kind of did a deep dive earlier when I knew we were going to be talking about this. And, you know, I agree. I think, unfortunately, part of the problem is that when he did go to the Angels, he was past his prime. But that didn't mean, like you said, he was still good. He put up good numbers. But I think part of it, I think part of what's amazing even more about the story is that I think those numbers that he put up in his 11-year peak, which I went from age 21 to 31, he put up some of the most monster numbers that I've seen across the board. Okay, so I'm just going to run this down real quick. So runs, he had 1,191 runs in 11 seasons.
Wow. That
was 108 runs a year average, okay? 2,073 hits in 11 years. That's 188 hits a year. Yep. That's like some guys don't get 188 hits in 3 years. Okay.
Well, if they didn't get 188 hits in 3 years playing a full season,
well,
but I get your point.
His average. Okay, this is the number that I really look at, and the strikeouts. I didn't do a strikeout comparison, but he hit 328 over those 11 seasons. 328. Today, you'd be lucky to have it. I mean, what Jeff McNeil a couple years ago hit 30 or 325. But you barely see guys hit over 320 today in today's game. When I'm talking about today, I'm talking about the last 5 years because of, you know, we can get into that as another discussion. But 328 average over 11 seasons for a guy that's considered a power hitter. That's amazing. Because most power hitters usually hit like 250, but I think you hit it on the head. He didn't strike out, and
he was a throwback. He was a throwback. Like he was a guy that could have played in the '60s with those numbers. I mean, he struck out 50 times a year, 40 homers, 335, 120 RBI. He was the type of player that I love.
Well, and then this is the number that really gets me: 445 home runs in 11 years.
Yep.
Dude,
amazing.
I mean, that's insane. That averaged out to 40 a year. So he he didn't hit like 55 or 70 like those, the guys in the steroid thing. He just consistently hit bombs. Yeah. So it was like 40, 45, 42, 37.
You nailed it. The biggest thing I could say about Pujols in those years was consistency. It was almost like each year was a carbon copy of the year before when he was in St. Louis.
I really want to say that in my opinion, and this is my humble opinion, that he is, during that peak, there was no player that hit as good as him. And that's ever in the history. Dude, 11 years of that.
I don't know if I'd say in the history, but he ranks among those greats.
I would say he's in the top 10. He's definitely mine.
He's a great player. I mean, let's not discount guys like DiMaggio, Ted Williams.
And I'm not, but I'm saying
great Rogers, Hornsby. Hyperbole, word of the week. But yes, he's unbelievable.
The point I'm making is that I think this guy's criminally underrated, especially when it comes to being talked about when it comes to these discussions. And you hit it on the head. Like, he's a throwback. I love it. He don't strike out, and that's my kind of player because, let's face it, that's all the guys do today is strike out.
Yep, it's actually insane. It's actually insane. I agree. And career numbers. I mean, we could just go further. 667 home runs, so he's 5th all time. On that list, Bonds, Aaron, Ruth, and A-Rod. Yeah. It's crazy.
3rd all time in RBIs, right behind Babe and Hank. I mean,
dude, that's why I think it was real messed up that the Angels cut him.
Oh, it was a total. It's a disgrace. How do you do that to the guy? Look, I get that everybody has to look out for the franchise, but to do that to a guy that's in his last season is an absolute atrocity.
And the Angels haven't won anything anyway. They're not going anywhere.
That's what's even worse. And,
I know.
And that brings us to another discussion. The Angels might be the team that wasted Albert Pujols and Mike Trout, their career.
Yes.
Both of them.
It's insane. The bottom line is they should have let Pujols play the year out. He would have gotten standing ovations toward the end of the year. He would have had his final tour, and they could have really recognized him as he went out with class. And instead, he goes out with a whimper. Before we switch to subjects, though, really quick, I want to keep on the Angels for a minute. How about Ohtani, dude? He made a start the other day through 7 shutout innings. He's the first pitcher to start a game on the mound as a pitcher and while leading the league in home runs since Babe Ruth. That's crazy. And I think they took him out after 7 shutout innings. I think he had 88 pitches, and they put him in the outfield, so he stayed in the game. So he could have gone back and closed the game. They could have had somebody pitch the 8th, and he could have came in and closed it out in the 9th because he stayed in the game. But you know what got me thinking too? I would rather just leave the fucking guy in. It's the American League. You got a DH. You don't have to pinch hit for him. He had 88 pitches. How cool would it have been if he's leading the league in home runs and he threw a complete game shutout? But the value is gone. Nobody cares. We take our pitchers out with 88 pitches. But
we had a whole show on that.
I know.
We probably could have 5 shows on that and we could probably get audience participation and have as many guys that are pissed off like you and I are about how the game is went. I mean, Frank's on here watching. He's one of them. Yeah. I'm sure he agrees with us. It's an absolute joke. I mean.
But speaking of Hall of Famers, why don't we get into the other guy we were going to bring up tonight, Aaron Rodgers?
Oh.
What are your thoughts on this Rodgers situation?
I mean, I got to be honest with you. I kind of go back and forth every day. I have a different opinion. Like when the news first surfaced 2 weeks ago when we were doing the draft show. And, my first thought was, man, he's totally in the right. The Packers, they really have done him dirty. They didn't really sign anybody or get him weapons or, get players around the guy. Now, but then the more I think about it, then what do you consider Devontae Adams? A piece of crap? Because Devontae Adams, I know you and I don't agree. I know you think Tyreek. I say Devontae.
We're talking about who I think is the best receiver in the game.
All right, but my point is
Devontae Adams right there. He's great.
Okay, so he's a weapon. Aaron Jones is certainly a stud at running back who also can catch the ball out of the backfield. I mean, he does it all. They have multiple guys. I mean, they have Alan Lazard and Valdez Scantling, they're not just some, run-of-the-mill receivers. I mean, they might not be stars, but they're not what I would consider terrible receivers. And they've also had good defenses, surrounding his team and a good offensive line. So I'm starting to think that my latest opinion says that Rodgers is kind of being stubborn. Because although I do consider him as, and I know you hate lists, and I had him in my top 10 of all time, but I mean, he is. If you look at his numbers, he has elite numbers. He does. He really does.
No question.
But let's face it, what has he really done in the playoffs? He has one Super Bowl. One. So I'm not
trying to knock the guy here. Like you're going more further into knocking him. I'm not trying to do that. I think he's a great player. I think he's a winner. I mean, he won a Super Bowl. I mean, that's a great accomplishment. But I do think he's being a baby, Jay. I really do. I mean, when they gave him his contract extension in 2018, it's like, what is it? I don't know. What is it? 5 years, 140 million, whatever. I don't have it in front of me. But even then, he was kind of prickish. They just signed him to an extension, and he made some snide comment right after about something. Oh, well, this takes care of me for the next 3 years. But implying that, okay, I might opt out or I might cause a problem after 3 years. It was like he was predicting then that he was going to ruffle feathers after 3 years into contract. And it just seems like he's being a baby. Okay, so they drafted Love. You're still the starter. They have never implied that they want to get rid of you, the Packers. They've never implied that they're going to switch quarterbacks. You just won an MVP. All they've done is bend over backwards to say how valuable you are to the squad and that they want you to be the franchise quarterback moving forward. Everything I've read is that they recently offered him another contract extension to make him the highest paid quarterback, and he declined it. I could be wrong, but I read that. It just seems like he's being a selfish baby. Like he's just being a baby because they didn't talk enough to him before they drafted Love. And it's like he's holding a grudge over it. And
you used the perfect word.
What's that?
You used the perfect word when you said prickish. That's exactly what he's being, a prick. Dude, I'm not. All right, you're right. I was being a little harsh, and I'm not here to knock the guy because I'm not. I think he's great. But what I am saying is I think he's being a baby, and we both agree on it. We both agree on that subject. To me, I think he needs to honor his contract. Dude, if he has just as good a chance to win a Super Bowl with Green Bay as he would anywhere else. Green Bay has a good team.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you not? You just had an MVP season. Why would you not want to come back? I really do think it comes down to, I think he's being selfish, but I also know that they said that he got in a heated fight with the GM. But you know what, dude? Listen, we don't all like our boss. I mean, at work, let's face it. Most people don't like their boss. Bosses are not meant to be liked. Bosses are meant to do a job. If you don't like somebody, you have every right to not like them, but you're gonna say you want out of the team because you can't get along with a certain guy.
Yeah, but again, I think blame is being pointed in the wrong place. The way you're putting it, I don't care that he got in a fight with the GM. As far as does that make the GM the bad guy? Not necessarily. It almost seems like to me it's more on Aaron Rodgers. Why did he get in a fight with the GM? Because he's bitter because they drafted Love. You know what I'm saying? You're saying, oh, his boss might be a prick, but is he? You get what I'm saying here? No. I'm thinking this is all on Aaron Rodgers.
No, you're misunderstanding. I was just saying that I get that you don't like the guy, but you don't like him for the wrong reason. I agree with you.
It's all on
he didn't do anything wrong. Yeah.
It's all to me. That's kind of what I'm saying. Everything I'm the more I get into this, it just seems like it's more and more on Aaron Rodgers, the one being out of line. Now, obviously, he was pissed off with LaFleur in the NFC Championship game last year when they decided to kick the field goal instead of going for it on 4th down. Rodgers never got the ball back. I get it. You're upset.
Yeah, but hold up. You and I both texted each other during that previous 2 plays where he could have scored if he would have run the ball.
I was just going to get to that. That's what I'm saying.
He had a wide open goal.
Yes, I agree. So again, I'm just saying why he's mad. I'm not saying I agree with that.
Well, I got you.
I know that's another thing. He mentioned it in a press conference somewhere. He said something in an article I read that he was unhappy with that. They never got the ball back. But at the end of the day, even if, for example, Russell Wilson, when they threw the ball, when all they needed to do was run Marshawn Lynch in to win the Super Bowl against the Patriots. You hear Russell Wilson complaining every day about it? That Pete Carroll made the wrong call? No, you move on. You try to improve. You learn from your mistakes. I just think Aaron Rodgers is doing everything that's the polar opposite of a leader and a team player.
Well, what do you think is going to be the end result? Do you think
hold on. Before I get into that, I wanted to bring up one more thing that he did. Like, I read this recently. September 3rd, 2020, Rodgers, during an interview on SiriusXM NFL radio, says he feels good about his top 4 receivers, Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard, Marcus Valdez-Scantling, and Jake Kumerow, whom Rodgers had raved about since the Packers signed him in 2017. The next day, he was cut. There's another little stab in the back, I guess, from Rodgers' perspective. They cut Kumerow. But I'm just like looking at all these little things that it seems like Rodgers is holding grudges over. Why? To answer your question, where do I think this is going? I don't think it ends well. I just don't.
You think he plays for the Packers, or do you think they trade him?
I'm to the point. I just don't see it because he's being so stubborn.
Where do you think he lands? Because I say Denver. I think John Elway is.
I definitely think Denver would be my top pick of where he could land. Same as they did with Peyton Manning. It just seems like with Elway there, they want to bring in franchise guys. I could see it. Yeah.
And they got a lot of weapons. And Rodgers already said he'd like to go to either Denver, the Raiders, or I believe I know it was Denver or the Raiders. There was another team involved. Miami.
I didn't hear that, but I could see him going to Denver.
Yeah, I don't think it ends well either, but I have a little bit different opinion. I think he does play this year for the Packers, but then I think he retires or goes somewhere else. I don't think they're gonna, because I know that he does hold a lot of cards because he could retire right now, but realistically, he doesn't really have a leg to stand on because he's under contract. And technically, like, I think he's going to come back. I think they're going to end up mending fences. But like I said, I don't think it'll be a long-term thing. I think he plays this year out and then he's done.
Okay.
He goes into somewhere. I just don't. I don't see the Packers trading him because I don't think if the Packers trade him, they're done, dude. Like, they're done.
I agree. From the Packers' perspective, obviously, we've just been through this. They want Aaron Rodgers.
Rodgers is the Packers. I mean,
yeah, but that's kind of the whole point that we just made. Of course, from the Packers' perspective, they don't want to get rid of Aaron Rodgers. That's why we're saying Aaron Rodgers is being an asshole. You kind of just like went back full circle. Like, if we're looking at it from the Packers' perspective, they're done without Aaron Rodgers. We agree. So why in the world would they not want him on the team? But I don't know if Aaron Rodgers will play. He's being that much of an ass. I could see him holding out. Who knows? I've even read where he might retire rather than play for the Packers.
Well, he did say that, and then they were saying about him being, the Jeopardy host. But I mean, come on, man.
Well, that could be down the road. Not now, but yeah. But I don't see him playing. Anyway, dude, let's get back into the rock and roll for a minute. There was a big story this week.
Yeah.
David Ellefson from your favorite band, Megadeth, finding himself in a little bit of hot water. For those that don't know, a video surfaced of David Ellefson supposedly flirting, maybe having some sexual conversation with a girl that was alleged to have been underage. The girl in the video actually came to his defense, saying that she's not underage and that it was misinformation. That being said, he still is married, I think, for 27 years. So either way, he's doing something not good. But anyway, what are your thoughts on this situation?
I mean, for me, it's very disturbing because obviously you just hit on it's my favorite band, and I love David Ellefson. I bought his new album with his new band.
We love the album. We love it.
I think the bottom line of the whole thing is even if she wasn't underage, and even if it's not, a grooming situation.
Well, yeah, that's what they said. He was grooming an underage girl.
Well, even if it's not, regardless of the situation, it's still a bad look. Obviously, that would be. I mean, I don't think his wife is on board with this. I mean, I wouldn't think so. So it's definitely upsetting as a fan to see any of your heroes get kind of
they're disappointing you. They're disappointing you.
Very disappointing, but in the same sense, I would hope that the girl coming to his defense means that it didn't happen.
Well, we know it happened. There's a video.
Well, I mean, I'm saying coming to his defense that she's not a minor or that it wasn't a grooming situation. Because I don't think she would come to his defense if it was actually the truth. Because let's face it, there are situations out there where people will try to slander somebody's name. I did kind of think it was kind of interesting that Megadeth just announced a tour and it happened like the day of that this news came out.
The bottom line is, I'm going to assume he didn't talk to an underage girl and groom. And if he did something, to violate his marriage, that's sad, but it's none of our business. That's another problem with the world we live in right now. Everybody's business is for public consumption. Now, I get that when you're a celebrity, that kind of comes with the territory. I understand that. But this wasn't something Dave Ellefson put out there for the masses. You know what I'm saying? This was something that was between him and somebody private. This isn't like David Ellefson, like walking down a street and fans see him. This is something in the privacy of his own home. And I just think it's kind of also a sad commentary on where we are as a culture, that nothing is sacred. Nothing is sacred, Anyway, speaking of accusations, I just got an alert. The NFL has just heard firsthand accounts from 4 of Deshaun Watson's accusers. Just throwing that out there. I know we weren't going to get into that in this show, but I just got news of that. So that could be a crucial step forward toward the league rendering a judgment in the Deshaun Watson case.
Well, to piggyback off that, I saw earlier that there was an article out that quite a few of the accusers are very upset at the way that the NFL has handled it. There was an article that came out, and I'm wondering if that has something to do with it too. Like the NFL is probably, getting a lot of grief.
What was the article? I didn't see it.
I read it earlier. There was an article out that there was some of the accusers are upset at the way that the NFL has handled the situation.
What do you mean? Like, what are they upset about?
They're upset. Meaning that they feel that they're not being taken seriously. Like what they said. Like the fact that there hasn't been any kind of even, I know the NFL is saying that they've been investigating it, but I guess these girls feel that the NFL hasn't done their part in, kind of whether it's a punishment or whatever, it might be. They haven't done their due diligence enough, and they're not being their voice is not being heard, basically. Understood. So I'm wondering if that has anything to do with what you just, the alert that you saw.
Now they've heard firsthand accounts.
Because I'm sure the NFL, monitors these situations, and I know that they read the news and they read articles. So, the fact that, this could be coming to a head. Yeah, we've talked about it numerous times. I mean, I think he's suspended for the season. That's just my opinion. I don't think they can go any other way.
I don't see any way that Deshaun Watson plays this season. I just don't.
I agree.
So anyway, let's move on before we got a little bit of time left. The picks of the week. I know we've both been looking forward to them. And if you don't mind, I'll go first. What do you think?
I love when you go first.
All right, I'm going to do it. Bro, KK Downing of Judas Priest fame just released the first single from his upcoming record. What is it? Hellbound Hellfire. I'm looking it up. I was listening to it earlier today, and I'm just drawing a blank on the name of the track. Long story short, dude, I'll pull the title of the track up really quick. It kicks major ass. It's KK Downing reunited with Tim Ripper Owens, also of Judas Priest fame. Those Demolition and Jugulator records that came out during the time that Rob Halford was out of the band. Hold on, I'm trying to pull the name of the track up. Why am I drawing a blank on this track?
I can bring it up.
Yeah, hold on. Because I just heard it this morning. That's why. Hold on.
Hellfire Thunderbolt.
That's what it was. I was saying Hellbound Hellfire. Hellfire Thunderbolt. There it is. There's
The
a
album,
video for it. Dude, it kicks ass. Dude, Tim Ripper Owens, probably more than he ever did on the Jugulator and Demolition records, sounds like Rob Halford. I mean, this sounds like a direct effort by KK to sound like Priest, because obviously there's been a lot of like talk in the news recently that KK's was unceremoniously fired, in his words, from Priest. You know, the original story was that he retired, but then apparently he had changed his mind. I recently, saw an interview that he was on a podcast and he said this. Apparently, right after he announced he was retiring, and we never heard this at the time, but apparently he changed his mind and they had already brought in Richie Faulkner. And they said, whatever, we're moving on. And then he was pissed off, obviously, when Glenn Tipton came down with the Parkinson's disease and could no longer tour. He was very upset that they didn't just go back to him to fill that slot. He just doesn't understand. He feels like he's been alienated from Priest, not respected. And honestly, this first song sounds like a continuation, I think, of like something from like Angel of Retribution, Nostradamus. It sounds like what KK brought to Priest. And it's like, it's missing from the new Priest, I think. When you hear this, you realize it. This sounds like Priest at their peak. It sounds like, I think it sounds like something from Angel of Retribution, that period of time. It's awesome. It's amazing. Check it out. The first record's coming out. What is the name of the record? Hold on.
Sermons of the Sinner.
What is it?
Sermons of the Sinner.
Sermons of the Sinner. That's what it. Yeah, I have it
This is
here.
another great name for an album with Priest.
Excellent album. It's coming out August 20th. So that's my pick of the week. The name of the group is called KK's Priest. So it's obviously KK Downing in a direct effort to compete with Priest. Pissed off that he's not in Priest. So check it out.
I don't blame him.
I'm with you, dude. I don't either.
I love
don't
KK
get it either. When Glenn Tipton could no longer tour, even if you're going to go back, okay, KK retired, he changed his mind, they hired Richie. I could maybe see Priest's perspective there because they're like, oh, you're not really committed anymore. We're not sure that this is for you at this point. I get it at that time. But then when he was wanting to come back, the years had passed, and then, Glenn couldn't go on. Why not bring KK back? It would have been the perfect thing to do. Instead of having Andy Sneap doing the touring with them, he's not really even a Priest member. He produces some records for them, but why would I bring KK back? So I don't blame him either, dude. I think I'd be pissed off too if I was KK. And if you read Rob Halford's book, which I did, you learn there was always a competition between Glenn and KK. I don't think they ever really fully got along, but it's awesome. Check it out if you haven't done it.
I checked it out today. I was blown away, so I agree. Great pick of the week.
Thank you, Jay.
My pick of the week actually drops tomorrow.
Ooh.
The album. So my pick of the week is by the band Sunbomb.
Ooh, excellent pick of the week. That was on my list.
My pick of the week, the album Sunbomb, drops tomorrow, the full album. The band is comprised of Michael Sweet from Stryper and Tracy Guns from LA Guns. Now, you can't talk about two different polar opposites as far as music, as far as their beliefs. But when you put them together musically, I'm talking about this album kicks major ass. There's 3 tracks that have already dropped. You can check them out. It's called No Tomorrows, Better End, and Life. And like I said, the full album drops tomorrow. Be prepared to be blown away. It doesn't sound anything like either band. It does not sound like Stryper, and it doesn't sound like LA Guns. If you want to know what it sounds like, it's kind of like a Priest, Maiden,
I agree,
type vibe. It's got a lot of. It's more dark sounding, and it has. And if you know Tracy Gunn's history, he loves that Black Sabbath type sludge metal type sound. So, like I said, Aaron already agrees. Check it out. Sunbomb. The album is called Evil and Divine, and it drops tomorrow.
Yeah, it's even a great album name, especially you think of LA Guns' most recent record, The Devil You Know. Tracy Gunn's more of a sleaze metal guy, LA Guns, and Michael Sweet being such a devout Christian. It's just like God and the devil, melding together on a record.
Evil and Divine. Like, that's what I mean. Like, these names of these albums lately have been off the hook.
Yep. I think it's a great name for a record, and I've heard it, and I love it, and I'm looking forward to the full record. So, great pick of the week. Anyway, Jay, it's been a great show. I really enjoyed it. Look forward to next week, and I hope the Mets are still in first place when I see you again on Sports and Metal next week.
Let's have to wait and see. You'll have to be checking in with us. We look forward to having you all back with us next Thursday.
Awesome. Anyway, everybody, great show. We look forward to seeing you next week. Rock on.
Peace out.
And that's our show. Tune in next time for more Sports and Metal with Jason Voorhees and Aaron Savage. Woo, yeah! Got something to say? Hit us up at sportsandmetal0423 at yahoo.com or on Twitter at sportsandmetal.